G'day kids and grown-ups. If you are loving watching and learning with Ozzie, it would be amazing if you could please do me a really big favour and just tell anybody else that you think might enjoy it too. In the meantime, enjoy this brand new episode, and as always, stay keen.
Ozzie, 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 oi! Ozzie is a friend of yours and he's a friend of mine.
G'day Ozzie. G'day Ozzie. G'day Ozzie. G'day Ozzie. G'day Ozzie.
G'day kids, Ozzie here. Today we've got a really special book. It's called Finding Our Heart, and it's a story about the Uluru Statement and learning about the importance of our First Nations people here in Australia. So let's get stuck in, see what it's about. It's by Thomas Mayer and illustrations by Blak Douglas. We live in a big, beautiful country. And we come from many different parts of the world. Together, our nation is called Australia. Look at all the different flags from the different countries. Before this place was called Australia, we Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people were here for thousands and thousands of years. You see this map? We'll talk about that a little bit later in the book, but that's all the traditional names of the land around this country that we call Australia now. We cared for our country, the plants and the animals. We sang, we danced, we worked, we learnt, we shared. We were the first to bake bread, and we invented many ways to live with the land. We have the oldest living culture on the planet. Isn't that amazing? When Captain Cook arrived, our way of life changed and we were treated badly and ignored. Look, they started chopping down trees, building factories and houses and farming. So we protested and we asked all Australians to listen to us because we know our country, because our country is sad and we need to find our nation's heart to make it better. The Prime Minister, the leader of all Australians, asked us, how do we find the heart of our nation? You see this? You recognise what flag that is? That's your Aboriginal flag, isn't it? So with many other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people from all points of the southern sky, we showed the Prime Minister how to find the heart of the nation. We started with the truth. And this here is called the Uluru Statement from the heart. And we'll find out a little bit later in this book what that's all about. The heart of the nation did not come with the ships, with Captain Cook. It did not grow on the farms. The explorers couldn't find it, though they searched far and wide. It wasn't in the banks or in the ground. These are all things that came after Captain Cook arrived. Or in the big cities. And it wasn't in the rule book. This is the rule book, 1901, Constitution of the Commonwealth of Australia. Where is the heart of the nation? The heart of the nation has always been right here. Right here. And here, in our voices. When we all came together at Uluru, we invited all Australian people to accept our voice and our culture as a gift. We invited everyone to listen to our heart in our songs, see our heart in our dances, learn where our heart is from in our stories and languages and how we have cared for our environment. We will only find the heart of our nation and make our country better when First Nations voices are heard. Will you help find the heart of the nation? Will you? So there you go, kids. That's a really good book introducing you to the ideas of what the heart of the nation is, what the heart of this beautiful country called Australia is, and also introducing you to the Uluru Statement. Now this next couple of pages is a bit of a summary of what the Uluru Statement is. So I'm going to read that to you now. What you need to know about the Uluru Statement from the heart. More than 250 years ago, Captain Cook landed on what we now call Australia. When he arrived on his ship, the Endeavour, there were many Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander nations. They are called First Nations because they were here before Captain Cook's ship. First Nations people, or Indigenous people, have lived in and cared for Australia for more than 60,000 years. They survived 2 ice ages. They cared for the land and the animals and are the longest continuous culture in the world. Captain Cook took all the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander lands and gave them to Britain. When the lands of the First Nations were renamed Australia, the Indigenous people were not included in the discussion on how we work together as a country. They were ignored and treated badly. In 2017, Indigenous people from all around the country met at Uluru for a very special meeting. They had big talks and they wrote the Uluru Statement from the heart. This document, the one that we saw earlier in the book, it explains to all Australians how we can find our heart. The Uluru Statement from the heart suggests that First Nations people should have a voice, and we should have treaty and truth. A voice is a way for First Nations people to talk to Australia, and our hope is for it to be added to the Constitution, because the Constitution is Australia's rule book, and if the voice is in the rules, it will always be there to help decide what happens in this country. A treaty is an agreement because we all need to agree how we can live together. The truth is so we all know what has happened, so we never lose our heart again. Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people would like you to share the Uluru Statement from the heart so that together we can find Australia's heart, our heart. So this book is really good because it goes a step further and suggests different ways that you can help find our heart. Things like finding out what First Nation you lived in and acknowledge the traditional owners often. So remember that map that we saw at the start of the book? So this map shows you the names of the First Nations of Australia. So whereabouts are you from in Australia? You might not be from Australia at all, but if you are, whereabouts do you live? Ozzie is from Sydney, and that is called Eora. So Ozzie lives on Eora Nation. That's the traditional name of the land that I live on, before it was actually called Sydney. It's very cool. Go back and find out all the traditional names. Other suggestions are learning Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander words in different First Nation languages. Or you can learn about the different Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander seasons. You might think that we only have 4 seasons: summer, autumn, winter, and spring. That's right. And you might think that whole months are assigned to each season. But in each place across Australia, Indigenous people think about the weather quite differently. The start and end of each season is based on things that happen in nature, such as the flowering of a particular plant or certain animal behaviours. So maybe you could go out and find out what the different seasons are called. You could read books and watch shows by Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. You could watch lots of Aussie's videos because we're starting to do more and more videos on Aboriginal and Indigenous culture, celebrating the importance and the impact of First Nations people. Or you could ask a family member or a grown-up to share the Uluru Statement from the heart. Now that's the Uluru Statement from the heart. I'm not going to read it all, but it'd be really good for you guys to read that with a grown-up or maybe even your teacher. So kids, there's lots of really good lessons to take out of this book, Finding Our Heart. And hopefully you understand the importance of the Uluru Statement and what it means to our First Nations people. Kids, I hope you've learnt lots. We'll see you on our next book at Storytime with Ozzie. Until then, stay keen. Hey kids, did you have lots of fun today watching Ozzie? I hope so. Did you know that we've got a heap of Ozzie episodes on our YouTube channel? If you haven't already, go back and have a scroll through. I reckon you'll find some others that you absolutely love. And while you're there, why don't you hit subscribe? That way you won't miss out on any of our new videos that we bring out. We'll see you again soon, kids. Until then, stay keen. Oh, and by the way, did you happen to find the hidden Ozzie icon in that video? Yeah, make sure you look closely because they're in every single video. That's right. Stay keen, kids.
Ozzie, 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 oi! Ozzie is a friend of yours and he's a friend of